Welcome to the Smart Sales Solutions podcast, where we learn to implement intelligent solutions in a complicated marketplace with your hosts, Don Cunningham and Rich Rudnick.
Welcome, everyone, to Smart Sales Solutions podcast. Our topic today is Q2 forecast, what to expect and how to position yourself for success. I'm your host, Rich Rudnick, and joining me is Don Cunningham, our co-host. Don, thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh, very welcome. You're very welcome.
So Don comes to us from Dallas, Texas, with a 35-year success track record. Don was a high-performing real estate agent for over 15 years. In the last 18 or 19 years, Don has been coaching primarily real estate agents to great levels of success. In fact, he's taken some brand new agents and made high six-figure income earners out of them. Don brings a lot of value. He's probably one of the most experienced coaches in the country.
The world.
And probably the world. And I've learned a lot from Don, and I think we're going to learn from Don today too. So Don, thanks so much for joining us.
You bet. You bet. Thank you. Do you mind if I introduce you?
Please do.
Yeah, this is Rich Rudnick, my friend and cohort. And Rich started a Smart Sales Solution in 2004. Mm-hmm. And as you recall, 2008, 2007, 8, 9, 10, those were tough years, but Rich has made top producers out of a number of people in a number of industries. He's coached 31 different organizations, over 1,000 coaching clients. Rich is esteemed as one of the best sales trainers in the market. And I'm just happy to work with Rich.
Well, thanks.
Most of the time.
Yeah, right. And today will be no exception on that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, before you start, before we dive into this, I got a question for you. Mm-hmm. Why is it important to look ahead and predict or forecast the future?
Well, it's a really good question because that's what we're talking about here today. So I would say it's more forecasting than predicting. Okay. It's important to take data and study the numbers. Too often we're working in our business and not on it. But we need to look and see where the trends are. Where have we been? Where are we heading? Mm-hmm. And it's really important to be strategic in your business approach and make the adjustments. I mean, it can be costly if we're on either side of an adjustment. Again, and I want to say this multiple times, hopefully today, it's not so much what the market's doing as much as what you and I and our clients are doing and those listening are doing in the market. That's more important than the market because we can succeed or fail in any market. We can fail in the best markets and we can succeed in the worst. However, it's very important to know where we're heading and how to adjust and take advantage of the opportunities and minimize the risks on there. Think about this, Don. It's like if you're planning a picnic or an outdoor event, we look at the forecast. And
like a wedding?
Yeah, like an outdoor wedding, it's really important that you know whether to have a canopy or not from the heat or potential rain. And that's what we're talking about here. And so we want to be prepared and respond. But before we look ahead, we need to look also, I think, at 2018 overall. So let's look at 2018 and then let's do a quick Q1 review because we just finished that. We're just in the early stages of Q2 2019.
Okay, so let's spell it out. You do the macro view, and I'll come in and follow up with some of the micro view.
Yep.
Is that okay?
Sure. That sounds great. So, disclaimer: we are not economists. We're business professionals. Don and I are. So, we've been doing this a long time. We help our clients to run their business like a business and want them to think of themselves as a CEO. So, we're going to take that position with our clients. But let's take a look at 2018. And I would say, Don, let me know your thoughts. I would say arguably this is one of the best years we've had in a long time.
2018. Yeah.
Absolutely. Probably one of the best in decades. Now,
with one minor exception.
Okay.
The fourth quarter was a little challenging.
Right.
At least that was my perspective.
Yeah. Well, and the data says that too.
Into the fourth quarter.
Right. The data says that too. And by the way, folks, I'm going to share some statistics, and included with this podcast is our blog page. And on our blog page, you will see specific stats and numbers. I'll try to cover as many of these, but you'll also have those as well. But let's just hit some highlights. So quarter two of last year saw a 4% plus increase in GDP growth. Now, this is in the U.S. And overall, the year finished at 2.9%, a very, very strong year. However, just like you said, Don, the second half, there was a slowing. I think if we look at a curve, and by the way, one of the links that we provide will give you the chart, but it was a peak and it slowly dropped third and fourth quarter. So there was a tailing. So I think we could say first half was stronger than the back half. Unemployment ended up being probably the lowest we've seen in decades, probably in our business lifetimes. Highlights. New job creation up, strong consumer confidence, a little bit of a dark cloud though at the end, right? I would say the trade deficit spike, and the stock market didn't do so well. There was some concern of that it was overinflated. The national debt was kind of weighing on things. So that's how the quarter or the year ended, right? Started off really strong. Overall, really, really good numbers, but some jitters there a little bit. Now let's go to quarter one, which we just finished. Interesting as well on there. Lower job growth than expected. And that concerned people. However, unemployment was at the lowest point it's been, I think, ever, 3.8%, or for many, many years.
Well, that does. I'm going to just interrupt you for a second because I know you love that. The reason why it's lower is because there are more people working than ever before, and part of that 3.9% aren't even looking for jobs. So that's why I believe the job growth wasn't as strong. But I just had to throw that in there.
Well, yeah, I think you're spot on, and I think we're getting almost to zero unemployment because everyone's benefiting too. If you look at the demographics, African American, Hispanic, women, all minorities, everyone is up on jobs and down on unemployment, which is great news. So I think some of the concerns coming into this first quarter come more from a global perspective,
right?
And I think that has to do with China and Europe slowing, and we're all interconnected. The trade with China, the trade war has affected them quite a bit. It's taken a little bit of a toll on us. And so there's some headwinds. I think something that just came out a week or two ago was the bond yield curve, which hasn't been where it is since 2007, which has some people concerned about a recession. But then we had the stock market rally. So the most of the losses from quarter four have been wiped out, pretty much erased. You know, Don, we're in a 10-year bull run. It's amazing.
It is amazing. I don't understand it, but you know, God is good.
Hey, let's roll with it. And I think most experts would say we've got at least another year or two in there. Now, here, I'm going to go out on a limb. And we don't know where this is going to end up. But if we end up with a trade deal with China, that could boom the market. And
every aspect of it. Yeah, I would agree.
Every aspect, job, trade, everything. So if that happens, that could be great. They revised our forecasted growth this year down to 2.1%. Remember, last year we ended at 2.9%. So, but we still have a strong economy, the strongest in the world, which we've usually always been. But expansion will end, right? I mean, this thing can't last forever. Just like I mentioned with clients that droughts and famines will end. They don't last forever. Neither do feast and prosperity times.
Right.
So we want to just roll with them as they go. Here's the thing about interest rates. rising last year. Now they're coming out and saying they've even lowered them a little bit. They're not expecting to raise rates maybe until they'll take a look at it third quarter, depending on how second and third quarter goes. I'm going to make a prediction that I think that second and third is going to be better than people think, but I don't want to get too far out on that. But if that happens, they'll raise rates. But they're signaling, hey, no raise interest rate hikes for quite some time. And that's a bonus for buyers.
I just got off the phone with a client this morning, and I said, we probably never see threes again. And he said, well, I've got one lender who's at 3 3/4 to 3 7/8. I said, you're kidding me. I got to quit saying that then. I just never thought they would go below that. But you're looking at, basically, you're still looking at between 4 and 5 for the most part. I know there's some loans out there, but these were 30-year fixed. So who knows?
3.75, 3.875 is still possible depending on the terms and so forth, which are great rates. Great economy, great rates. Does it get any better? Well, let's see here. Retail sales up in January, down slightly in February. Okay, blue collar and service industry profits of those industries are expected to go down. Why is that? Wages are up. Well, why are wages up? Because unemployment's down. It's another aspect of a strong economy. So profit margins in blue collar service industries are dropping, but it's generally because of a strong economy. So,
well, there's one other aspect to that, Rich, and I think that a lot of robotics are taking place, a lot of automation is taking place in the fast food industry, and there's talk of more and more every day. So, again, that's gonna hit our service industries in a big way. But service is about people too, so I don't expect it to take them all the way out of the marketplace. So,
well, we'll do another podcast on the impact on jobs with AI, with artificial intelligence, because that's definitely something that we'll need to have a conversation about another time. But you're right, there's impacts with that. Here's the last thing that just came out, fresh off the press. Housing prices are expected to climb in 2019. So here's what I'm seeing on the business side, Don, and I want you to take the micro. Basically, from the business aspect, businesses had a strong third and fourth quarter, even though the economy went down. Most are hiring of our clients. Mm-hmm. They're adding to payroll. That's a good, strong indicator. If we look at P&Ls from year comparison from last year, most are up, most are ahead. I think those are really good indicators. So for them, 2018 finished strong. 2019 are coming out of the gate. So that's really good. So that's the big picture. That's what we're seeing on the macro. What are you seeing in real estate and loan origination?
Well, what I see in real estate is, again, the first quarter was not great from my perspective, and some of that has to do with weather in the Bible Belt, the Rust Belt states. Challenges that they have with weather, and on the East Coast too. So you got some challenges with that. It's been kind of a rough winter. I don't know that it's been a record-setting winter, but you couple that with a lack of inventory that we've been dealing with since this first or second quarter of 2018. Mm-hmm. Nothing's really changed a whole lot about that. We're looking at I have not found anybody who has over 2 months worth of inventory. You're looking at 7 months as a balanced marketplace. I'm not sure how we're going to get to 7 months again without some major challenges between here and there. As far as the balance of the second quarter, I believe what you believe, and I believe that the second quarter is going to take off. I think there's a huge pent-up demand for getting houses on the market mm-hmm. today. I think there are a number of people who are sitting back, and whether I don't think it's true, but so many people focus on the spring market being a better time to list their houses, and they do look prettier. They look fresher, especially after a winter. So there's some truth to that. And so I really think that we're going to see an onslaught of listings over the course of the next 60 to 90 days. But the pent-up demand for buyers is huge. Most markets have way more buyers than they can satisfy. So, and with the interest rates the way they are, this is going to be the best opportunity for buyers, probably for the next 5 or 10 years, to be honest with you. I know that's ridiculous to throw it way out there that far, but it just seems like everything's poised. If we continue with low inventory, eventually the prices begin to climb. And then even with interest rates being low, you still lose buying power. So those new buyers, those first-time home buyers, are going to be impacted. Right now, they're probably in their best position if we had more inventory. And I think that's going to start taking place. It's already started to take place. We're seeing more listings in the last week than I have for quite a while. I think that 2019 is going to be strong. I think from this point forward, we're looking at a pretty strong marketplace. There are some challenges out there. When you look at where we sit today, and I was just sharing this with one of my clients, was because of the low inventory out there, some sellers are reluctant to put their home on the market because of this somewhat false narrative that I'll be homeless. In other words, I get my house will sell in 2 days, and then where do I go? Because there's no inventory out there. And I do think that and maybe we could kind of feed this back a little bit between you and me, but one of the things I see is that you look at the sellers out there who are reluctant to put their homes on the market. Number one, if your home is not on the market, you have no shot at buying something if that's necessary to complete a transaction.
Yeah.
When you look at the options, the options are never as bad as I'll be homeless. I mean, it's almost ridiculous when you think about it. We have options to extend the closing date from the very beginning. We have options, not a great one, but we have the options to put in there subject to buyer or seller finding appropriate housing. And then you look at the reality. If I sell my house, I got all the money in the bank. I'm ready to rock and roll. I'm in a much more powerful position for negotiating than I would be if I was, just had my home on the market or didn't even have it on the market. And then you look at, what if I had to make 2 moves? How dramatic is that really? Because today you can call up a moving company, they can move it into storage. You might spend $3,000 to $4,000 a month to live at the Hilton for a month, but really, how bad is that? I mean, you could probably survive with room service and a maid, room service and housekeeping. So some of those things can be used to help us move through. If our listing agents are out there and actually quantifying the expectations, then that could put people at ease a little bit. Let's go out and find that house. So,
yeah, I think this comment about the seller being willing, if necessary, if they can't find the right home, to sell them, be liquid and be willing to have alternative housing, is for those who don't want to settle, the best option. Here's what the problem is, and this, most people are in pain avoidance. So there's a pain of the double move and are wanting instant gratification. So the more disciplined seller would be more likely to take that approach, right? To come that in there. So that would be a small percentage, but you're right. That has to be vetted out. We actually did a blog on that last year about the dilemma of dealing with the client. I won't sell till I know what I can buy first, but they have to sell to buy. You have to be really careful on how to navigate that. But I would agree with you on the summation that it's going to be a very strong second quarter. So we have a generally very strong positive news. There's some of those headwinds we always have to bring in because we don't know where all of that's going. There's some folks that say that we're kind of trending kind of downward, which eventually at some point we will. But I think if we stay to this next second quarter with the rates being low, with seeing like you're seeing in all these markets in the first quarter, especially northern colder markets, inventory listings that are coming to market, price to sell, are flying off the shelf. So that they're turning quickly, even with a suppression from weather, and that causing some to want to sell, like you say, that mindset of waiting till spring, which the people should be getting on now, even though I know it's technically spring, but we think of maybe May when we're thinking spring,
right.
Getting it now sooner. There'll be more people that come to market, people that have been waiting. But as you say, on the loan origination side, pre-approvals are up. And one factor that's not taken in place between these two industries, which I like to say is the most important strategic relationship in all of business, is the realtor loan originator, that they need to work tighter together. And lenders need to be bringing listing leads to the realtor partners. The realtors have more buyers than they know what to do with. There's no listings. Inventories are down in some markets 30, 40%, and even sales are down, but it's because there's no inventory. So everyone needs to help bring inventory to the market. Loan originators have more listing lead potentials than realtors. Very often that's not understood. Well, every loan originator's past client next move is to sell, and how they get their purchase loan. By the way, they need to be a purchase LO right now.
Right.
Because even with interest rates where they are, they did climb quite a bit from where they were 3 to 5 years ago. So there's not a lot of refi potential, maybe a little bit in this last little pullback. But their past clients need to sell, and after they sell, they buy. That's where they get their purchase deal. They bring value to the realtor on bringing listing leads. That's what they want. So lenders need to work more in sync with their listing with their agents to bring listing leads. The buy leads will come out of that. The purchase deals will go. Work together to bring this in, but we've got to be positioned on this. So what are some things? You have a comment you want to make?
Yeah. I just wanted to say for lenders, for LOs, I think one of the things that I see is really interesting is they give the pre-approvals, but on the one hand, they're not really doing their job when it comes to follow up with that agent. Now, agents aren't doing their job if they're not staying on top of it. But when we join these two as a strategic entity, if I'm going to take the time to pre-approve someone, I better stay on top of that realtor and make sure, because if they're not going to do the job, that's another opportunity that I have to give to somebody else if they're not going to follow up with it. And I think that we need to have that connection with our lenders specifically, that say, you give me a lead, I will follow up on it. If I give you a buyer to get them pre-approved, I want you to stay on top of me too, because we're never going to get this thing done if we don't work together. And I see a lot of lost opportunity there. Especially with the number of leads coming through different platforms like Zillow and Realtor.com and so on and so forth. Easy to work on just what's coming out today and forget about what happened yesterday, last week, or the last month. So anyway,
I think that's great. And it's important that the lender's in control of that buyer, that the agent is in control of the buyer, that they're leading the buyer, not the other way around. That the lender and realtor see themselves as peers on equal footing. Very often the lender sometimes feels like, or they have this inferiority positioning sometimes in that relationship, not the strong ones, but too many of them where they have to buy and control the realtor. Very often I have my lender clients educating the realtors, because we shouldn't assume that realtor is skilled enough in a hot seller's market to navigate that buyer to a successful win and sale, because too often we're seeing 2, 3, 4, 6 offers written before an acceptance. And that's wasting everybody's time. They have to be in it to win it. So filters that we want our buying agents to have with their buyers would be, number one, only working with buyers on agreement, and only showing buyers on agreement who are ready to write it to win it today. And I would say, like you were saying earlier, non-contingent. Very rarely will a contingent offer win. Maybe on a new build, new construction, it's not finished or something, but rarely. And so, and maybe in higher pricing, that might be an option. But generally show 3 to 5 homes and write, and then only come back and maybe show the top 1 to 2 and write. Here's one other thing, and then keep your thoughts. So I want you to comment, but I want to finish this one thought. And that is, I have top lenders, and one in particular who on the last 6 of their purchase clients won every offer, and how he got them to win every offer. And you're talking about being proactive, is notifying the lender now, the loan originator, notifying the listing agent before the offer comes in that the offer's coming in, and giving them an overview on the level of skill or level of qualification that their buyer has, to put them on top of the pile, and really knowing that they've been educating as a loan originator too, how to write it to win it, and what it's going to take to get out there. Otherwise, they're just wasting their time. 6 out of 6, 6 out of 6, it's great ratio in this market. And those are with different realtors. So the lender can have a great impact on winning that as well. So go ahead.
The only other thing I was going to say, and this may come across as a little self-serving, but the reality is that many lenders out there, if you look at the status quo, are not doing this. And when it comes to becoming the best LO in your area, you're going to need coaching, and we do professional coaching of loan officers. And you have had such a great background with that. And I think that it's just important for people to know that Smart Sales Solution is an option for becoming a better agent, a better loan officer, and helping, again, prospective agents become great agents too. So there's both of those things in place. So I just appreciate what I've seen you do with loan officers over the course of the last 10, 15 years. So I just wanted to put that plug out there.
Well, thanks. I mean, you as well. And I think whether you're also in business, if you're a business owner or in general industry, like you said, we've covered over 30 different industries, and it's the disciplines. We don't like that word discipline, but we help our clients bring in those key business disciplines, run their business like a business, and that's where it all starts. And again, it doesn't matter what the market's doing; it's what you're doing in the market that matters. And it's the disciplines are key. I got a couple questions here. So, what should realtors and LOs do to prepare to get in the lane of success? And then tagged onto that, Don, who might get left out if they're not careful?
Well, I think there's a good possibility that buyers agents may get held back a little bit as we see the market pick up. I think that again, loan officers who don't pick up what we're trying to share with them at this particular point, more and more people are starting to get it, and some of that has to do with, again, coaching companies being able to share with them how to work directly with their realtors. I think teams themselves will, again, with the lack of inventory today, I don't know that this is going to hold true all the way through the year, but I see a lot of these big teams who are really struggling, to be honest with you, because they've got all these buyer's agents and they've got no inventory. So that's going to be one area that's going to, and as that picks up, we've still got a lot of agents out there who are hungry So it's not going to be everything's not going to go to the teams. It's going to go to those people who are out there with the daily disciplines, with the focus on prospecting, lead follow-up, lead generation. All of those things are going to be key. And then relationally, staying connected with that buyer and or that seller. So those are some of the areas. Was there another question you asked me?
Well, just who could get left out? I think you're kind of answering that.
Okay. So again, right now, I think, again, we're looking at a pretty strong second, third quarter. I think between now and the next 5 months, which is the end of the third quarter, we're going to, is that right? Yeah, that's right. Second quarter. Yeah, close to that. By the end of the third quarter, I think you'll see that we had one of the best. We may even talk about 2018, and that's about as far as I'm willing to go with it, as far as prophesying.
Right, forecasting. So let me just say, I think from my standpoint, people need to be prepared and disciplined. I think more than ever. I also think there's going to be a few that really do well during this time. And I say that in all due respect, that when you're in a high volume, narrow market, right? I think it's a fast track. Let's call it a fast track, narrow market. The ones who will win and how you need to be prepared are those in the real estate side that are on the listing side. And let's face it, listings are harder to get, but easier to sell and get a check.
Right.
Buyers are easier to get, but harder to sell and get a paycheck from. And they take more time. So what happens, we have this phenomena, you're familiar with the Pareto principle. We talk about that a lot, the 20-80 rule. Well, really now it's the 5-95 rule. So 20% making and doing 80%. It's really 5% making and doing 95%. So you mentioned with the teams, the lead capture and so forth. Conversion's the whole deal, right? Lead conversion. But it's the discipline. So I would say the disciplined agent that's prospecting daily for listings. Their intent and focus is to get listings. Well, how do you do that? Well, you work toward that every day. You get yourself in the lane and get yourself in front of those potential sellers, working the best leads, which are past clients and sphere of influence, and asking them for referrals. That's where the 70% of client lead sources come from past and sphere and referrals. Even if they have a high budget on internet leads and so forth, they still generally see 70% come from there, yet they don't work it well enough. So being more intentional, asking for referrals, particularly specifically asking what 2 or 3 names come to mind of someone you know looking to sell in the next 3 to 6 months. And we want to move them to action now. We need to educate our folks. Too often, we don't test or challenge their thought process or mindset. People by nature delay decisions, and delaying generally is costly. And I will say right now, that's the case from the selling standpoint. So they need to be focusing on getting more listings, working expireds. I know there's not many, but they're there. Right. Someone has to get them. We have to keep that in focus. FSBOs, these are all things that maybe agents have thought, well, I've outgrown them. I don't do them anymore. Well, do you have enough listings? Most would say no. Well, they need to be working those because someone isn't getting those. The other is with in your farm, strategically working your farm, 30-year plus homeowners. Don, that market is enormous. Those are the folks that will be retiring or on the older end moving toward, they're in their 60s to say 90s, and they're either early retirement, which now they're on fixed incomes, or and it's about wealth preservation, or they're in their 80s and 90s needing to move to assisted living. And they have tremendous needs. And that is the largest demographic in our country from the baby boomers on. And so we need to understand who those folks are and work those, connect them even through with assisted living directors. We need to be working with those folks. We don't need more houses built in this country. We need more assisted living facilities. So we need to have a a solid game plan, consistently working them. Also, 2011 buyers. For most of the markets in the country, 2011 was the bottom. You mentioned 2007-8 when the recession started. It bottomed somewhere around 2011. You can identify who those 2011s are, and here's some interesting stats. The average person buys or sells every 5.9 years. Well, right now they're 2 years overdue. They bought low. The market's at a peak. It's at a high point. People who buy low love to sell high. They have tremendous equity. So we have a message we want to get to them. Those are just examples on it. But I would say, backing up to answering the question, being disciplined and focused intentionally every day, asking for and getting yourself in front of potential sellers. We gave a couple of examples, are the best way to prepare and build key strategic relationships with the best LO you can if you're a realtor, and if you're an LO, with the best realtor you can. There's a small percentage that tend to do most of the business. That doesn't mean that if you're on a newer agent that you can't become a 5% agent. Just think and act like them and you'll become them. We want to model those disciplines and those approaches.
Let me just add one thing to that, because sometimes when we use the Pareto principle, and we went from 80-20 to 95-5 in the real estate industry, what people need to know, what agents out there need to know, whether they're realtors or whether they're loan officers, is that 5% is fluid. I mean, it is moving all the time. And anybody can climb into that 5% with the things that you just mentioned, and that's the disciplines, the prospecting, the accountability, the time management, the lead follow-up. All of those things are key to getting where you want to go. And like I said, there are people moving in and out of that 5%, all the time. Having said that, I wanted to get one more thing in before we get off this call. You have talked about this, and I think it's really an interesting subject. Over this winter, we've had so much snow in so many areas, and now we're getting heavy duty rains. And you've identified a pattern of where you see flooding possibly taking place, and maybe that would be just a good cap on this, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
sharing that with us a little bit.
Sure. So, in particularly the upper Midwest, Minnesota, South Dakota, North Dakota, Iowa, Nebraska, heavy snows this year, Wisconsin, and the melting has taken place. We saw Nebraska flooding. We have from, say, the Red River Valley north. In fact, these are areas that could be adversely affected and may not see the benefits that we're talking about, because they're talking right now, there's over 1 million acres of farmland underwater. And in most cases, that will at best delay planting, and at worst, in a lot of cases, eliminate planting this year. So I think we should expect higher food prices as a result of that. But that will have an effect on communities that are around that have some dependency economically on there. But what we have is tributaries that come from the Mississippi and the Missouri rivers and downstream. I think we should expect some big flooding events, and some of them will be in pockets, but some of them could be widespread. But even with that come opportunities. And let me just share a story from Hurricane Harvey that hit Texas a few years ago. I have a dear client down in Sugar Land who works for the largest builder in Texas, Perry Homes. And it was interesting because he's been working with them for 37 years, more than anyone. He's their top salesperson. And he was moved from one of the subdivisions. Actually wasn't happy about that. They wanted him to help kickstart a new one, but he was kind of resistant to change. Well, then Hurricane Harvey hit, and I saw the devastation, over 100,000 homes destroyed. And seeing the devastation in Sugar Land really got me concerned for him. So when I was able to finally reach out to him and asked how he was doing, He said the water came just within 15 feet of his front doorstep on his house. I said, oh, great. And how about your subdivision? He says, not one home was flooded. That levee held. That subdivision survived a 1,000-year storm. And I said, you know what that means, don't you? And he didn't have time to think. He was just glad to be alive, right? Not have to be cleaning out his house. I said, your house just skyrocketed in value, and your subdivision will sell out very quickly because these 100,000 homeowners, a number of them will need to get new homes. And by the way, being in an area that survived a 1,000-year storm is one that they'll be able to sell on for many years. And that was the case. Now, of course, building prices went up as a result. There's always give and takes on it, but I think there's problems that not some people will struggle with that in this next quarter, but opportunities will come from those areas that weren't affected by the flooding. There's always that. I think we need to be mindful too of those who won't make it, because I said there'll be a few. Mm-hmm. So those who may not make it are the ones that lack discipline, that wait for business to happen. I like to say there's three kind of people: those who make things happen, those who watch things happen, and those who wonder what happened. And so I think those who watch and wonder will be left behind. I think those heavy on the buy side will be hurt unless you're very disciplined and controlled over your buyers, setting those expectations, working with key loan originators like my client who front load and are proactive with agents. And I think LOs who have weak real estate partners or have been too heavy on the refi side and haven't transitioned over. So I think those people could suffer. So we want to make sure everyone has that chance to get in on this.
Well, listen, folks. One of the things that we've accomplished here today is we gave you a fourth quarter recap of 2018. We gave you a first and second quarter update and a perspective of what the first and second quarter are going to, or the second quarter is going to look like. And we even gave you a weather report for the Midwest. So, Rich, I'm going to turn it back to you and maybe just put a bow on this. We're running out of time. So finish this up.
Well, listen, thanks so much, Don. It's always great partnering with you on this. And I always have takeaways and learn from that. And we want to just thank everyone who listened. A couple things. Go to our website, smartsalessolutions.com. On the bottom of the homepage, you'll see our blog podcast page, or a little window to go to the main page for our Q2 forecast. And I actually have the actual stats in there. We have links to our sources that we used for today. And let's piggyback on what you said earlier, Don, about if you want help getting ready for Q2, if you want to up your game, if you want to do more business in less time, if you need help with hiring, and you want to have your best year ever, give us a call. We'll be happy to have a conversation with you. And there's no obligation for that. And we'll be happy to walk you along with that. Don, thanks so much.
You bet.
Stay tuned. Rich. We'll be back in a few weeks with our next podcast. Thanks so much for listening. Take care, everyone.
Right. Thanks, Rich. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Smart Sales Solutions podcast. For more information, go to smartsalessolutions.com.